I can't take it anymore. I've definitely lost my mind. As awful as it sounds, my mom's aunt ended up in a nut house, so I'm probably going there too. It's 'cause I keep hearing things. Oh, there it is again. This deaf sound. Did you hear it? No? I hear it all the time, especially when the evening comes. I'm just going crazy. It started a couple of weeks ago. I was lying in bed, reading a book, and all of a sudden, bang! I heard the sound behind the neighbor's wall. I was alarmed at once, because my neighbor, the tiny old lady, Mrs. McCluskey, had been in the hospital for a week, and she lived alone, so it was clear that no one could be in her apartment. The sound was repeated shortly thereafter, and I got scared. Maybe it were thieves in her apartment. I ran to my parents, told them about my assumptions. My mother threw a robe over her pajamas and ran out. She and I went right up to the neighbor's door, but it was quiet. We stood there for a few minutes, until we were cold to the bone, and we went back home. Mom grumbled angrily. "You should watch less horror stories at night, then you would not have imagined anything." I felt ashamed. The night passed quietly, but the next night it happened again. It seemed to me that behind the wall, someone was jumping or running from corner to corner. Then, all of a sudden, bang! Something fell. And then, my insides went cold as I heard a rumbling sound. It was moving closer and farther away from the wall, and I was all my ears, afraid to move. I stayed up all night, and in the morning, coming down the stairs to school, I almost bumped into my downstairs neighbor, a strange lady, Miss Brahms. She had black eyes and hair as black as tar, and she always looked at me with a strange squint. And I thought I could see the devil's fire in those eyes. "Good morning, Kirby," she said to me. "How did you sleep?" And she flashed her eyes at me so hard that I froze in place. I thought I heard that awful rumbling in the night again. I didn't answer her, and quickly ran down the stairs. After school, I didn't hurry home. I went to my friend's house. We did our homework, and I didn't go home until my mom came home from work. My fears were once again confirmed. As soon as night fell, something awful was happening behind the wall. There was running, thumping, scraping, even hissing, which made my blood run cold. I buried myself deeper under the covers and covered myself with a pillow so I wouldn't have to hear it. I slept through the next day's classes at school, and when I came home, I found a strange black envelope under the door. My hands trembled with fear. I decided not to touch it and simply pushed it with my foot and went into the apartment. And then the most terrible thing happened. Before I continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And make sure you have the bell clicked, then you'll know when there's a new video coming out on the channel. There was a loud crying behind the wall. It was like a little kid who had been hurt. I felt uncomfortable. I had to put on my headphones with a relaxing melody. I lay like that until my parents arrived in the evening. I was pale and very nervous, which didn't escape Dad's attention. Reluctantly, I told him what I had heard. He was quiet for a few minutes, and then explained that the sounds of crying were probably coming from upstairs. There was a family living there with 3 small children. "No, Dad. I heard that crying behind the wall, from Mrs. McCluskey's." Dad shrugged his shoulders and reiterated that it was impossible because she was in the hospital. We ate dinner in silence and went to our rooms. I watched some movie for a long time and fell asleep. And at exactly midnight, I woke up abruptly from the noise. The dishes in the next room broke with a huge crash. I shrieked and ran to my parents' room. Mom agreed to sit with me for a while, but for the next hour, which she spent over my bed, all was quiet. In the morning, no one believed me again. Mom decided it was all just a bad dream. After breakfast, my parents left for work. and I ran to school as fast as I had ever run in my life. Already in the evening, when I was back in my room, so as not to be distracted by extraneous sounds, I turned on the music and sat down to do my homework. But as soon as the song ended and another was to begin, and I heard a terrible hoarse moaning. It was like it wanted to say something, but stopped abruptly. A few seconds later, I heard a door creak, and I heard something heavy against my wall. I jumped back in fright and surprise. OMG! Could it be a ghost in there? Maybe after the old lady went to the hospital, the evil spirit that lives in her apartment raged? But what could I do about it? The next day, as I was leaving the apartment, I looked at our neighbor's door. Goosebumps ran down my skin. It seemed that behind the door was something creepy and mysterious. Just when I thought about it, something appeared outside the door. I heard quiet footsteps, and something started scrabbling against the door. Its long nails digging into the wood and started to scratch and bang at the door, trying to break it open and attack me. OMG! I ran for my life, and I spent the whole day at school. At night, it happened again. I heard the creepy rustling and footsteps again, then the quiet crying, the ringing again, as if someone had thrown a cup or plate on the floor. And then the silence, oppressive and frightening. And then someone spoke softly, as if over my very ear. Help me! Then I jumped out of bed and ran to sleep in the living room. In the morning, as soon as my parents woke up, I said that there was definitely someone in the next apartment. Mom nodded her head negatively, but I couldn't take it anymore. If you don't help me, I'll call the police myself. I can't sleep because of this noise. My parents looked at each other and called the concierge, who had spare keys and permission from the neighbor to check her apartment in case of emergency. When the door to Mrs. Klusky's apartment was opened, we saw a terrible sight. The entire floor of the apartment was strewn with scraps of newspapers. Dishes on the floor were broken. There were broken fragments everywhere. There was a string hanging from the lamp in the room. And the walls were torn to shreds, with claw marks everywhere. And then we heard a quiet meow. And we saw a little black kitten crawling from under the sofa and frightened, looking at us. A kitten? Where did it come from? All my fear vanished. I got up on my knees and beckoned the kitten with my hand. He quickly climbed into my arms, licked my cheek, and quietly purred. I exhaled. As it turned out, Mrs. Klusky had gotten a kitten a few weeks before she was hospitalized. And when her ambulance took her to the hospital, she was in no condition to inform anyone about the poor animal that was left alone in the apartment. It had food and water, and the kitten was scared, so it climbed everywhere it could, knocking down dishes and playing with newspapers. For another week, the kitten lived with us, and when the neighbor recovered, she took it back and let me visit the kitten. Now I'm not afraid of the sounds in the neighbor's apartment, because I know it's a kitten playing. And one day, I was coming down the stairs to school, when suddenly Mrs. Brahms appeared out of thin air. She looked at me slyly and smiled and said, "Kirby, hi. How's it going? I heard about the kitten. That's very noble of you." I nodded back and took a step back. There was an unpleasant chill about that lady. Suddenly, she leaned toward me and whispered, "Why didn't you open the envelope? You were supposed to open it." Suddenly, her eyes were two narrow black slits, and her voice was like a hiss. I cried out in fear, and I ran as fast as I could. And at night, I heard that ominous hissing and that quiet voice again. "Help me!" I must be going crazy after all. What do you think? What did this lady want to tell me? Why did I have to open that envelope? And why am I hearing those noises again? Write to me. I'm really looking forward to it.